All right, you're all on video. You ready? It's your 10 seconds of fame. All right. No, so in the politics folder, okay, go to new, create a Google Sheets. Okay, so I want you to do this with me. So when I'm asking you, like, go to new and go to Google Sheets, I want you to do this as we're doing it together, okay? When you click on that Google Sheets, it'll take you to a screen that looks like this, right? It'll just create an untitled spreadsheet. There are way more cells than we actually need, but that's okay. All right. Now, the way that Google Sheets works, right, the top row, if we can put our country names in the top row, it'll automatically organize and categorize it based on that system. So if we look back to our benchmark two, right, what we're addressing specifically, bless you, what we're addressing specifically is this component here, the land size, right? So notice the bar graph compared to 4 other countries. So how many countries do I need in total? 5. Perfect. So if we notice here, right, I already just kind of habitually highlighted 5 cells. For this example, all right, and you can all use this, like I want you to use the same exact numbers so that we're all doing the same thing. So it's nice and easy and straightforward. All right, type in the United States. Now, the United States is a country that no one was allowed to choose, which is why we're using it for our example. All right. Now, we don't know. 10 a.m. on the first Tuesday of the month. There we go. We don't know what countries we're going to compare it to yet because we don't know how big the United States is. All right. Would it make sense to compare the United States to something that's like the size of Vatican City, for example? Bless you. Why not? Aladdin? Okay, we don't know how many people there are. How big is the U.S.? Is it a small country or a big country? It's a pretty big country. It's like half of North America, right? It goes from one end of the continent to the other end. So we're probably going to be looking for countries that are of similar size, right? Because if we want to compare, if we look at why are we doing this, what is the point of this component, right? The point of this component, why I'm asking you to have a bar graph that compares the size, is so that you have a reference point of how big a country is if you don't know anything about it. If I can show you this is how big it is compared to things that you've actually heard about, it might make more sense to the viewer, right? Oh, that's how big it is? All right, now I can start to work with this in my mind. So first things first, in ours, we have our country title here. Underneath it, we're going to find out how big the United States is. If there's ever anything, please interrupt. Because you know, I'll skip something. But so we got to find out how big the United States is. Right now, if we look back at the instructions, is there any unit of measurement included in the instructions? Eric? Kilometers, right? So it says square kilometers, right? SQ means square, KM means kilometers. So we're going to be looking for land size, right? So United States land size in kilometers squared or in square kilometers. Either way, it's the same way. Type that in, we'll search that, and we'll come up with a number that's about 9.834 million kilometers squared. Now, if I take this 9.834 million kilometers squared and I copy it, okay, and then I go back into this and I paste it, 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, you'll notice that this is really big and it's kind of annoying, right? An easy way to avoid that, right? Double click on the cell. When you see how that it's blinking inside of the cell. If you double click inside of it and then paste it, it automatically formats it to whatever the formatting of the cell is. So you don't have to mess around with the formatting. So just double click inside the cell, paste it in there, right? And then it'll automatically format it. Okay. Now I can hit enter and it enters that in. And now I've got my baseline, okay? We're not ready with this number yet, though, all right? Because if we're going to make a bar graph, this box cannot contain any sort of special characters, any sort of letters. It can only contain numbers. So how can we take 9.834 million kilometers squared? How can we convert that into something that is just a number? Meaning, how do we convert the word million, right? How do we convert it out of this? Aldine, what do you think? We got to add some zeros, right? So number one, we have to delete the kilometers squared. If you leave the kilometers squared in there, Google Sheets will not read it properly. So you have to delete the kilometers squared. Now, when we have our million, right, we're going to delete the word million because that's letters, right? Let's change this period to a 0. And how many zeros do I add to the end of this to make it 9.834 million? Aeon? 3. What if I said billion? How many zeros would you add? 6. And if I said trillion? 9. Yeah, but the principle applies, absolutely, right? So you're adding enough zeros to where that now looks 9,834,000, right? So 9,834,000 is 9.834. All right. So now we hit enter. Now we have a workable number that's just a number, and Google Sheets will read that properly. Okay, so this is an important process, guys. All right, every single time that we enter a number into one of these boxes down here, we've got to make sure that we match the formatting so that Google Sheets will read it correctly. So now that I have my thing in there, I've got my country, the country I'm focused on, in the first box. Now I need to go find some other countries that are comparable in size, right? So we said the United States was a pretty big country, right? Well, what if we Google biggest countries, land size, square kilometers? Right? Biggest countries, land size, square kilometers. Nothing major about this search, nothing really complicated, but just a basic search to give us. All right, now we've got a list here, right, of all of these, the largest countries in the world by land size. And if we look, the United States falls right at number 4. So what we want to do, again, the point is to give us a reference point so that we can compare our country to other things that we know about, right? If we look at Russia, Russia's almost double, right? Like we're about 9.8 and this is about 17. Is something that is double it, is that going to be a good, useful comparison? Sandus, what do you think? Why not? Just say a little bit louder. Okay, it's way more, right? It's not comparable. It's not going to give us a good comparison in terms of where we're at with the United States. So let's skip Russia. 9.879. Oh, now we're more in the ballpark. So let's use Canada, all right? I'm going to highlight just the number, not the letters, just the number, all right? And I'm going to copy that. Okay. Once I have the number copied, and again, we're skipping Russia only because our country, it doesn't really compare to our country that well, so we're not going to use that one. So let's go back into our spreadsheet in Google Slides. What country are we doing? Canada. And our number, right? Again, if I paste it, you see how the number is a little bit bigger? It's because if I just paste, it'll mess up the formatting. So I don't want to do that, right? What I want to do is I want to double click in so I get that blinking. And when I paste, it automatically matches the formatting, and it's just a little bit more straightforward, and I don't have to mess around with any extra tools. Now, this is a number that's workable. We can use that number. There's no letters in the box, so we're good. No special characters in the box, so we're good. So now let's go back to our list. China at 9.6 million kilometers squared. That's pretty comparable. So we're going to copy that one too, right? We'll highlight it, Control C to copy. Back into our spreadsheet. We type the country name, hit enter, double click in, paste it. Now we've got 3 countries. So we repeat this process 2 more times to find 2 more countries. Now these are the biggest countries. The next closest are probably going to be Brazil and Australia. So we'll highlight Brazil. We'll copy that. Oh, and I hit find accidentally. All right, we'll copy that. We'll go back to our Google Sheet. Type in Brazil for our country name. Double click into the cell and paste it. Now we've got Brazil in. Last one, we're going to do Australia. So let's highlight Australia's number. Remember, we're ignoring the kilometers squared for now. We're not ignoring it overall, just for now, because if we put it in that cell, it's going to mess up the Google Sheet and it won't read it properly. Okay. So we're highlighting that. We're going back in. We got our country of Australia. Double click in. Now I've got it there. Oh, then I must have not copied it. Good catch. Nice catch, Ahmad. There we go. All right, so now that I have my data in, I can look at my data. There's no letters, no special characters. Everything matches in terms of the formatting. I've got my names clearly up top. So highlight the data that you want to create a graph for, right? Start in the top left. Anything so far? Okay. So start in the top left and then drag to the bottom right so that it highlights this entire data set. Okay. All right, now I need your eyes on the screen because this next step is really complicated. All right, so just for right now, everybody please stop on your Chromebooks for a moment and take a look at the screen because I don't want you to miss it. All right. All right, here's the most difficult part. We're going to go up to this button that says Insert Chart. We're going to click it. Are you guys ready? Are you okay? Did we move too fast? We can go back and do it again. All right. I'm being sarcastic. I'm hoping we're picking up what I'm throwing down. Maybe not, but that's okay. All right. So highlight your data set, and then you want to find that, and you want to click Insert Chart. Now, mine's a little zoomed in because I zoomed in so we could see it. All right, but this is probably what yours looks like for now. Now I have a chart that I can manipulate around. I can drag this over here. If I want to get it out of the way, I can put it directly under it, right? I can move this anywhere in the Google Sheet I want. So I'm going to put it right underneath just to make it nice and easy with our data. Okay. If you have these numbers and this chart, you're in the right spot. So if you're seeing that, you're on the right path.
If you had to guess, what do you think the next step is?
Download it.
That would be maybe 2 steps from now. Let me ask you this. If somebody walks into the room right now and looks at this graph, what's this graph telling us?
Info.
About what? Right now we have countries and we have numbers. What are those numbers? We know what the numbers are. But what is the person walking in going to think? Are those how many apples are in the country? Are they how much money the country has? Are they how many bushels of peanuts that people eat every single year? What are those? What's that?
We need a title for each one.
We need a title and we need to label our X and Y, right? So the X, right? What? X. X is pretty obvious, right? The numbers are what needs the way. Otherwise, they're just numbers. They're meaningless, right? So we need to tell the audience what that is before we export. Yes, we need to export it, but that would be an important. So yeah, titles, labels of axes, so that everything has meaning on the graph and it's not just numbers. Fair enough?
Huh?
It's not really. Oh my goodness.
All good?
Because it looked earlier than that.
Okay. There might be, I'll take a look in a
You're
second.
highlighting it.
So let's add titles to this. And then Hal, we can take a look right after this in terms of like the specifics, because it might be just an off period. It might be a variety of different things. All right, so now that we have our graph, we have to add our titles so we know what we're looking at. So we want to go up to these 3 dots on the right. All right, so everybody migrate your mouse up to those 3 dots on the right, click on this, and go to Edit Chart. Okay, so right now I want you to go up to the 3, like literally I want you to take your mouse, right, and slide it up, go to the 3 dots, and then find Edit Chart, and then click Edit Chart, and it should open up this on the right-hand side. Okay. Now, if this naturally went to a column chart, but say it started off in a pie chart, and it's showing us a pie chart, right? Well, I don't want a pie chart. I want a bar graph, right? So then I can go in here and I can choose a bar graph, or you can choose any of these other types of graphs. Now, the reason I'm going with a bar graph is because, again, our instructions specifically say bar graph, right? It says bar graph right there. So in here, a bar graph is not a thing that Google Sheets calls it. It calls it a column chart. But we're going to use that column chart. Now we're going to click on this tab at the top. Right, click on the tab where it says Customize. And you'll notice this Chart and Axis Titles. Okay, click on the Chart and Axis Titles. And we don't want to name the chart just yet. What we want to do is we want to label this horizontal axis, and we want to label our Y, the vertical axis. So let's start with the horizontal axis, the nice easy one. All right, so I choose horizontal axis title from the list, and then I go to the title text and click in. And what would be a good title text for the horizontal axis? What is this showing us? Adrian? Countries, right? So this is going to show us our countries. Now, once you're in there, you can mess around with the color of it. You could change it to be red. You could bold it. You could italicize it. And you'll notice that's all changing what this is, right? If you want to make it bigger or if you want to make it smaller, all right, that's completely up to you how you want to take that. But you do have customization features with that. Now that we have our horizontal axis, let's do the same thing for our vertical. So we'll switch the selection to our vertical axis title. We'll click in the title text. And what is an appropriate name for the y-axis in this case? Adrian? Land size.
In what?
Aha.
Number. Kilometers square. Good.
So if you just say land size, that's not good enough. You have to clarify the units. If I say land size, well, is that 10 million inches? 10 million feet? 10 million centimeters? 10 million miles? 10 million miles is a lot bigger than 10 million kilometers. So we want to make sure that we're being specific. So go parentheses, right? Kilometers, parentheses. I don't know how to put in the little 2 to show it's squared.
I would just put SQ.
KMSQ. Yeah.
I just went on Google and it said like square math copy and paste.
Oh, perfect. You can do that too. Even more clever, right? You can copy and paste that little 2 in. Well played. All right, so we have our land size, kilometers squared. You took it to the expert level. I'm like, this is barely good enough. And you're like, oh, I've got it. Right? But so we've got our kilometers squared. All right. Last but not least, right, what we want to do is we want to name our chart. All right, now the chart title doesn't need to be anything complicated, but here's the benefit of a chart title. All right. If you title your chart on the chart, you don't have to add text in WeVideo. So you really have a choice. You could use the titles in WeVideo and just title the chart using those tools, or you could title it directly on the chart. All right. For this one, I'm just going to call it land size of comparable countries, because that's really what we're looking for, right? It's the land size of comparable countries. Now, there are other features that you could use. For example, the series, if I want to change the color of it, let's say I want it to be red, you could change the color to be red, right? You could change the line. You could change all these different things. You could change the background color. Let's say I want it to be, I don't know, some sort of a yellow, right? All of that's customizable. All right, and you can play around with that on your own time, but that's not important for right now. What I want you to do now is X out of this chart editor. So find that top X in the top right there. So find my mouse in the top right of the screen and then click that X out of it. All right. And then we're going to go back to our chart, click on the chart itself. And Aladdin, what's the final step that we need to do? Download it. So how do we download it? Again, it's very simple, actually. It's really straightforward. Okay. I shouldn't say simple. It's very direct. Click on the 3 dots. And look at that. It gives us this option of download, right? So we're going to download it. Download it as a PNG image. Do not download as a PDF. No. And no SVG is a PNG. That keeps all of the pixels exactly as they were rendered, so it doesn't mess up the video file or the image file at all. So we're going to download it as a PNG. Now we have this little bar on the bottom, right? Well, it might look different for you, so I'll X out of that. But if we go back into WeVideo, right? I go to my media, I click import, I can drag it over, or I can browse to select. And for me, it's going to be in my downloads folder. Right? So this is the one I created for period 1. We've got a couple other ones. I'm going to find the one that I made for this one. All right. I can either double click on it or click on it and open. I'm going to double click. And now I have that chart as a workable image file in my video. So now I can take that and I can drag it into my timeline, right? Put it on the appropriate track here. And all of a sudden now, right, I've got a chart that is a part of my video that I can do things with. I can manipulate it however I want. Does this make sense so far? Okay. One thing I want to show you. All right. Let me just pull it in from this one. Okay. This is why you want to find countries that are similar in size. France is less than 750,000 kilometers squared. So it's way down here. Does that give you any sense of scale? No, you have no idea, right? And even if I go back to this, right, you could do a Google search, but I already did this earlier, so I'm just going to give it to you. Let's say Vatican City, which is the smallest country in the world. Vatican City is 0.49 kilometers squared. It is less than 1/2 of a kilometer squared, right? Which means if I put that in, it's still 0.49. But can you see that on this scale? No, there's no way. Now, you might be able to find enough countries to where you can compare them. But again, you want to find things, guys. The point of creating this chart is to find things that have a relative sense of size. So how big is Myanmar? You have any idea how big Myanmar is? What about Tanzania? No. So even if the numbers come down to where that is actually the closest number, if you don't know what that country is, it might not be the best use to compare it to. Right now, the countries I included, we all are kind of familiar with those. But if you're including a country that we're not exactly sure how big it is, that's not really going to help us in that drive. So to help you with that, all right, there's this link in the benchmark 2 instructions. It has the size of the U.S. states. You can use U.S. states in comparison to your country. So you can say this country is the size of Texas. This country is the size of Rhode Island. Or, you know what I mean? Like you can use it that way and you can include that data as opposed to going out and finding countries that nobody knows about. Right? You want to try and find 4 things to compare your country to that are familiar to your audience.